We're just going to vote on some minutes, and we'll debate over it, a really robust debate. Okay. What is it? It's August 6th. How about that? It's Committee of the Whole. September. Oh no. I did. I was looking at the minutes at the same time. It's September 6th, folks. Welcome. It's Committee of the Whole, I think. Kat Martinez, everyone is here. And we are going to start off with approval of the minutes from our Committee of the Whole meeting, August 2nd, 2022. Any corrections, or I'll take a motion?
I'd like to make a motion of August 2nd, 2022 of the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Sorry for throwing everyone with that date. It was hard to say then, wasn't it? All right. Jumping over, it looks like it's working now. That was perfect. We just had to start like magic. All right, fire department. We've got Chief Joey Middleman talking to us about the fire report. With some swag.
First of all, we encourage everybody. The attorney, he's kind of big into tattoos. I don't know if you noticed it out here, but it's kind of a big deal. So he kind of needs a couple. So Mayor, don't, try and steal the tattoo. Oh. Yeah, like that. But as you guys know, I cannot sit while I present. We'll just give that. No, not really. You have to stay moving in life. Laura knows that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks for giving us a good opportunity. Sorry, that's going to just keep going like that. But we'll just keep going. An opportunity to present in the fire department. I thought it was a pretty neat idea when you guys started these, and then we had signed up on the sheet to present the departments and stuff. Hopefully, I give you guys enough time at the end to ask any questions that you guys have. But I do have quite a few slides. As I was making this PowerPoint, I thought to myself, there's a lot of operating parts that go along to running the city. And just as an individual department, there's a ton of operating parts in each department. So overall, if you guys looked at us, we're 64 employees strong. That's part-time, full-time. That's not counting the cadets. We'd be 69 if you counted the cadets, but that number always goes up and down. 4 part-timers that are always consistent, and then 5 cadets and roughly 50,000 volunteers. I bring up the volunteers for a key item. What you have in a fire department is your city, and that city is a representation of all of our EMS. We don't have a job, we don't have a need unless there's citizens out there for us to respond on. And in order for us to go on a call, they have to call us. In order for that first activation to be made in a fire department or building to be built, we need that good community out there. And our outreach system is so important. And that actually links up to every one of your guys' districts on that. So if I could sell something to you today, it would be the fact that when you tie in to your constituents out there, that it is so important that they're involved in how police, fire, public works, all of those key aspects really tie in to making the city a better place and then reducing the overall cost within the department. Because if they call us for bloody noses, that costs money, believe it or not, even though we're not transporting. And that's sometimes it is appropriate for a bloody nose to be called on, by the way. But I bring that up is oftentimes some of the calls we don't necessarily have to go on by an emergency nature. We're always happy to go on them, but community education is important. And I think all departments would share that same message to some degree or another.
Now, Joey, go back to that picture there.
Yeah, this one?
Is that with all the water? Is Jennifer Kennedy in the middle of that? Somewhere there?
No, I'm going to have to Deny, deny, deny. Appropriately deny and fold. All right. So to get to know your guys as firefighters, it actually goes back to Mayor Hales. Back in with one individual, the most experienced battalion chief went to school with the mayor, and that's Battalion Chief Joe Treadwell. They went to school together, graduated, right? The same year. It's humbling for me for that, because that year is something special to me. I'm going to leave for the mayor's sake. I can get him back a little bit for you, Jennifer. It was maybe the year I was born on it and stuff, but that's okay. If it wasn't so jovial, then I wouldn't be, so I won't have a job tomorrow. It's okay. All right, 57 shift personnel, so that leaves the rest of them up to the 64 that are on days. The 3 shifts are made up of 19 individuals per, so we have a minimum staffing of 16 on per day, so it allows for 3 people to be off per day because that's vacation. So that allows us to keep the rigs staffed, always 3 on an engine and 2 on an ambulance, and that's important. We're going to talk about that later on. Administrative works, there's 4 categories, and we'll talk about that. But let's get into the meat of the operations. So our organization chart I threw up there for you guys to have a quick spot check. And if you guys ever want like a copy of this PowerPoint, let me know. And then you guys can go. Even better is what that fine young lady Laura produces in the back, which is our annual report, which actually has almost everything that we'll talk about now within a much more detailed written form. So, and it is a lot better than our PowerPoint here. Sorry. And then somebody forgets to put on silent. What was your first rule tonight, Kat? Will you please, audience, put your phones on? No, that was the last
I was
time.
going to let it go
Hey,
in
but
case
now-
it was a fire. But, yeah.
No, it's never a fire. Actually, I actually did go on a cardiac arrest today. I actually went on a call today, which is always exciting for somebody in admin. I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but yeah, anyhow. Let's move on. I digress. So the 4 different areas are on there, and then we're going to break those down and tell you guys what's within those areas. So of that operations areas are medical calls. These are by month. You guys see January to December, and you notice a peak number in those June, July, and August, 534, 544, 542, and 550. This is all 2021 data. I could have given you easily this year's data up until, but sometimes it's not solidified until the year end comes, because you'll have these cases that are creeping, or these ones that are constantly rolling in, or if somebody hasn't paid their bill and stuff. So where we pull our data from to confirm we have the exact number of cases is like 3 different areas. And that way we're never missing anything on those cases. Because as the attorney would say, those are very important to not to lose. And, yeah. So, all right. The bottom number there of 201, 154, as you kind of go the orange, those are a number of transports. So when you look at it, roughly about 50% of the calls that are medical that we go on, we transport. The other 50% we release on scene. That's not to say they weren't needed to be responded on. Going back to my bloody nose comment. You have a diabetic that's a home diabetic. We respond on those guys, push a little sugar in their vein, or work it inside their mouth. We bring their blood sugar up. They get released on scene. Totally fine. Saves them over $2,000 of an ambulance bill. And then for us, we get to go back and service a little bit earlier for the next emergency, or to go eat the ice cream. I'm not for sure which one's more. I don't know. I digress again. So on those other calls that are out there, there could be an auto accident that you respond on, and nobody needs to be transported, but we're called quickly, and those are helpful, those ones out there. We are getting busier and busier each year. Our transports stay pretty steady right around that 50%. No matter what our call volume is, it stays consistent. What are the calls that are going on? You guys might ask. 671 falls, sick people, 643. Of those sick people calls, that's like a generic. You could say you're sick, I'm just not feeling well. And sometimes they're not feeling well enough, they can't even talk to 911 to get it across. And so those just get dispatched as a sick. If they're incomprehensible, then it's more of an unconscious or maybe a psych patient that comes in, depending upon what the dispatcher goes down a line of 20 questions and what they can get out of you on those 20 questions. Makes a big difference on what it gets classified. Vehicle accidents, we'd love to prevent those, and I'm sure PD would as well, but They'll always stay high. It actually, if you go back 2 years ago, was our number one call throughout the years, which brings up, we've decreased the amount of vehicle accidents. The 1 year it was up to 900 within a year was our number one call, and that's where the vehicle accidents. My concern where we're focused here is actually the falls. A lot of falls are preventable out there, and so we have a fall prevention program that we team up with IMC with. So say you're a little old, kind, gentle, experienced gal, and you have falls within your house. Our guys have little pamphlets that they reach out, and we can get them some hand rails installed. They go out and assist them on some of these. Other times they just refer them out through the IMC program or Intermountain Medical Center program.
Joey,
And-
the handrails and
Yeah.
things, is that funded? Do they have to pay for it, or is there funding available for that?
So we don't have any funding as a city or within the department, but if they have handrails, our guys have gone out after scenes and then just went and installed them for them, and or through the Falls program and through the county, that is fully funded. They come out and install those. For example, the house that I live in, the lady that was in it before, her husband, before he passed away, there's handrails all over this place. And they said, "You're going to pull those out?" And I said, "No, those are helpful. They're actually great kid swimsuit hangers too, so it's good. Multiple things." But yeah, anyhow, the county does have that system set up. So
Great, that's good to know. Thank you.
breathing trouble, the unconscious going down. Psychiatric, we could point out, and overdose. Those are definitely on the rise out there with us. And we'll talk about mental health a little bit later on throughout this. And our mental health of the community is a huge system that hopefully within the state and the community that there should be some great outreach going on through them. Fire calls, getting on to that. There's a lot. We could actually focus 30 minutes on just what we were talking about. But anyhow, we got to kind of keep going for some areas. Fire calls, our highest months, surprise, surprise, are in the middle of the summer because we have people out, whether it be burning yard stuff or little grass fires or fireworks or whatever it might be is out there. So our calls increase, as well as the fire alarms actually increase during that time. I don't know what it is with the heat, but we have more false alarms during summertime than we do during the wintertime. We have a lot of flooding calls of broken sprinklers and then triggering that off in the springtime when things start to thaw out and then the pipes had burst and then the water starts to flow. But it still doesn't outnumber that summertime. So I am proud to say that that fire calls at 1,119 calls last year was our lowest amount of fire calls in the last 7 years when I looked at our annual report, which is awesome. What's not awesome about it, that means the medical calls, because our call volume has been going up. So our medical calls are not only taking over the fire calls, but they're also, supplying, all of the missing calls that we could have on fires out there and just overrunning them. But what it is a good sign is fire prevention and the duties and the efforts that the crews and our office folks are actually working out there. The amount of false alarms from fire alarms in like a sprinkler and alarm building is actually, we're seeing that go down. Our goal is obviously to get those numbers down lower than that. I'll be surprised if we see them go down. Well, with that being said, I am a little reluctant. We made probably about a 200 or 300 call downside, but we kind of, that 11 to 1,200, if we go above that, then I start to panic. And if we stay right around that, at least we are doing a little bit better with our false calls on fires. So what are the notable fire calls? Out of that 1,100, you have 45 gas leaks. Those are actual gas leaks. And, I won't make any bad jokes there. Structure fires, those are 43 structure fires. That could be anything from a small closet fire to an entire house on fire or a commercial building on fire. So that does supply somewhere around 4 per month that the guys are actually going out that are using their suppression. We like to call it the silver bullet. That would be the extinguisher that you carry. That's a water can. A lot of those are put out by just the silver bullet or the extinguisher, the water can out there. There are typically, if you broke that 43 down, probably about a half a dozen significant fires each year that you'll notice come through. I didn't pull that number of significant because that word is kind of misleading, because I'd hate to say, your fire wasn't significant, but this other fire was for it. Because a room and contents fire is not a large fire for us until it starts entering into the kitchen and the other rooms and really causes smoke damage. And there are a lot of those that we're able to end up saving the majority of the area of the house from even the smoke damage because they get too quick enough. But those are larger fires. So brush fires out there. A lot of those are down on the Jordan Parkway throughout the summertime because that dries up. A lot of them are up in like a little field area up by the hidden lake area on the east side. They just have kids in these areas. Sometimes we have a few crazies here and there that have a tendency to light some fires, and hopefully we're able to reduce those down. We have had a little peak of arson, more so recently, but it kind of comes in spurts. It's really strange that way. I wouldn't say it's a trend. I would just say we're on kind of a higher point over this last summer, and hopefully it goes down. We've talked to the DA's office more because unless it's a reckless burning, then it goes above the municipal courts and then goes up into the DA's courts for that stuff. So,
Joey, that's
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you. Do we actively prosecute?
reckless burns, yes. And that would just be a ticketable offense, more or less. I believe the fine, GL might correct me, it's like $250 or $500, and it's a Class C misdemeanor.
And arson?
Yeah. Oh, so there's really 3 levels of arson that you'd have. You'd have reckless burning, and then you'd have intentional arson. That would go up to the DA's office into the district court. And then you would have, typically there's a death or a potential death with that arson to go along with it. And GL might add some more to that, but that's kind of the 3 main areas.
So we do actively pursue those.
Yes. And we actually are also part of a county-wide. Arson knows no boundaries of a city. And so we work
Right.
with all of the investigators throughout the county to make sure that if somebody is out there lighting a fire in West Jordan or Sandy or the UFA's area, then we're always exchanging and have a good working relationship. So although our number 1 relationship to prosecute these are always Murray PD. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I threw on something fun there. 2 ring removals. You guys didn't even know that you'd call 911 for a ring removal. The ring removals typically are not a 911 call. They come into the station. And actually, I don't know if Laura was with me. I was one of those ring removals. Recently, a gal just walked in and she's like, I just can't get this off of my finger and it's just causing, and her finger was all swollen up. And anyhow, we just cut the backside and solder a jewelry. What's a jewelry person called? There's a jeweler, but isn't there another name for a jeweler that's more scientific, like a cosmetologist does your hair? Anyhow, whatever that science name is, if there is one. If not, a jeweler works. And they solder it back together, and we just, continue to cut those wedding bands just right off. So you want to know the cause of divorce? We're it. So
I have a quick question on the
got
gas
bad
leak.
jokes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I have a quick question on the gas leaks. Is that in like industrial area, older homes, newer homes? Or?
They are all over the place. So we'll go on a gas leak that will be in your home. That's just a gas leak that somebody has not properly secured, say, the gas to the water heater, and it'll have a gas leak in there. It'll also be a gas leak out that somebody's digging a hole in a residential area and they hit it, or it could be the commercial area. And it would be, if I pulled those numbers, we don't separate them out into 3 different, but if we did, I'd almost be willing to bet through my history, it'd be equal across the board. If there was one higher, it would probably be inside the homes. Blue Stakes has done a fantastic job of encouraging you to mark them, although even though it's marked, that doesn't always prevent you from hitting it because you're having to dig right there and it's Captain Obvious. So, yeah. You guys ever wonder what a day at the fire station was like? I figured I'd try and, take you quickly through a day at the fire station. They start at 0700 every day. They do morning checks, 0700 to 800. They have morning briefings from their officer. They work out in the mornings typically, and then they go for training. After training, they go lunch, or they cook lunch at the station. That's more apt. And then they do the training pre-plans, equipment maintenance, and then their BC assignments or chief assignments in the afternoon is the typical day. We arrange these accordingly. They usually eat dinner at the station as well. You don't see them going out to eat at restaurants too often or anything. It just seems like a really bad idea because, and during all of this, including when you're having to do everything at the station, you're just going to get interrupted anyways, and that's okay. So we pull them in, we pull them out. They try and, if they're smart, they cook meals that can, just be turned off and then restarted. And or there's actually, believe it or not, there's a couple of moms that actually bring meals in to these guys. One of them's on shift. She has brought his crew meals since the day he started on day 2, every single round. It's crazy. Yeah. Let's talk about a mom. And I don't. So anyhow, they are catered to. Yeah, that's what we said. I think Laura even said, "All right, this is getting to be a bit much, But this mom, she cooks fantastic too. She has an Italian hand. Not all the crews are that way though. They have smokers and they loved cooking smoked meats. So after 6 o'clock roughly, it is their downtime. They do have some relaxed time. So if you guys are ever looking at what's in the station. But a lot of that downtime, however, I will say those that are motivated change that into a little bit more of study time and crew time for development stuff. And that is very important for them, as well as our calls do kick up, roughly from noon clear till about midnight. You'll see them kick up. The morning time, why we like to get that training in the morning is because it's the slower time, so we get training interrupted less than it does in the afternoon. 6 areas that we're going to talk about. These are the big areas that are the unknowns that you guys maybe not know that the fire department handles. Emergency management within the city falls underneath the fire department within our organizational structure, but really they report to the mayor's office when you really truly look at it, because the mayor is the emergency operator, the EOC command, and then he has an emergency manager, which is Nick Haskin, that then informs of a lot of this stuff. Even though Nick Haskin is a battalion chief that works underneath me, he has the ability with emergency management through all of our plans. He talks directly to the command staff of the city, which is the mayor, the chief administrator, and then typically both the police chief and fire chief are involved in there. What does that organize? CERT classes is one. That's just one level. I threw that up. Whole community preparedness. So we have the city mapped out in a lot of different districts and then have people that are able to connect throughout the city. And then those folks can actually reach out, and then this is Doomsday. And it's only on Doomsday.
Quick question on that.
What is Doomsday?
No,
That earthquake,
when
like
is
9/57.
Doomsday? How do you go about the whole community preparedness? Is it through churches? Can anybody sign up and contact the fire department?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
On all of those. So we do have to cross, GL, plug your ears for a second. We do have to cross the religion and community boundaries a little bit on that, because that's where in Utah, a lot of the organizations, but it's not just one religion. We have the church that's on 56. I believe it's a Baptist. I don't want to actually say it's what? Oh, okay. The Baptist church there. We have the Protestants. We have the, it's so fun. They have a chili cook-off down on 5th West and like 4400 South. That church down there plays a good part in it. Now, some of these church communities also go beyond Murray boundaries for some of the lessons that get taught. We've done the CERT classes for all of those organizations when they've requested it, and it's one of the awesome places that George and Tom and Mac all reach out to. So, yeah. Did that answer, Rosalba?
Yeah, I was just wondering how we as a city go and find some of those community leaders, and if they could sign up beyond that.
Yep. The easiest way to do that, and if anybody's listening out there, is if you look at our website, if you just want to dial our regular fire department number, the 2780 number, so 264-2780, then what we'll do is we'll put you in touch with one of 3 people, and that's Tom, Mac, or George, and I have the city broken up into 3 different districts, and then that district, they say, do you have a religion preference as far as, tied in? And if you don't, then we just put you in your assigned area. Those assigned areas would then have their emergency coordinator with it that develops their books. Tom Roberson is awesome. He used his area's book, and Mac Lund's same way. What's beauty about them is one of those, I should never talk about religion, but one is more religiously than the other as far as tied in. And between those two, they make a match to reach out, because Tom was up in Mill Creek, and when he moved into Murray, we were able to grab all of their preparedness books and all of their material and his little hand guide and everything, and then just plug and play between those two. And Tom, I don't think there's anybody in the city he doesn't know, I've decided.
Well, and the reason why I asked is I know during COVID, I didn't know, I still don't know who is in charge of our neighborhood because I'm not associated with the dominant religion. Yep. So that kind of puts me at a disadvantage as a community member if I don't know who they are.
Totally agree. So this is our goal with that. They started on the west side, and it's a constant ongoing goal. And these folks are just part-time, but they put in, I don't think Tom turns in any hours, but GL, plug your ears on that. I tell them to turn in hours, but I can't force them to document. They're working on the west side. They've gotten a little bit of the far east side with a gal that shows up at the safety fair, but their goal is to be able to get, actually, since I know where you live, into your area, but they haven't had a lot of push into that area yet. And they're hoping to get those. The other thing that we've noticed is the emergency coordinators in some of the older parts of Murray, like on that center street in the Wasatch, they tend to change out a little bit more. So I will do a little reach out for emergency managers out there. If you're interested in being your neighborhood person, it is not.
Yes, let's add that to my resume.
Yeah. I know.
No. And
It's awesome
I mean,
to
I
get
think
it
it's great we're having this conversation because I think it's also important to have including myself, who has been there for a while, and my husband, but we have a lot of members in our community that would love to participate, but how and where is the question that needs to be answered. And maybe there is a little bit of more information that we put out there versus it just going to churches or the dominant religion,
or totally
even us connecting
self-declared emergency manager.
Or even us
if you know the path
selecting.
And you're motivated to reach out to your neighbors, that's what we're looking for. So
there's a few people like that in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So
we've got about 5 more minutes.
Okay, I better cruise. Murray City Drill. They do city drills as well as department drills, and then also your emergency plans that are out there. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's so much more we could talk about there. EMS equipment ordering and billing. This all goes through a system. You guys bring in a revenue of over $2 million on EMS billing alone, and that's always going up and down. So that gives you the idea of what those ambulances bring in on the revenue, which is awesome. So I'll kind of leave it at that because I do got to cruise. Logistics. These are big, your CIP fund. Ambulances, to give you an idea, $375,000 for a new ambulance. They are astronomical what the price increases. A fire engine is about $785,000. That was the 2021. An aerial apparatus, make sure your seats are secured, fastened tightly. You're looking at $1.8 to $2.1 million on an aerial. It's mind-boggling. And Brenda, I should have really asked you to secure your seat, but she already knows all these. And then she laughs at me when I bring numbers. I don't know what that's about. You guys, in a couple of council meetings ago, asked about grants and stuff. We actually have a grant writer. That's Nick Haskin. It was me before. We've applied for many different grants. We can talk more grants later. Fire prevention. You guys have over 3,800 to 4,000. Jared probably has a current number, or Zach does, of current business licenses within the city, but right around there. Those we try and get every other year with an inspection. With the calls going up, then we've had to bring that on to days, and that's what Steve Roberson, Scott White, and George Zaboro go out and do, and they do these business inspections for us. To give you an idea, when these guys bring in a new business, and this is a good thing for you, it's not a bad thing, but that causes these guys to go out on a regular, like 12,000 square feet, 10 different inspections. They'll be in that new building. I'm going to leave you guys. We have made mention, a couple of you guys that asked us to explain code. I'm happy to come back and explain code on a different day, and I'd love to talk more about that stuff as well if you guys want. Fire investigations, this pile of rubble you guys see, those guys go through and undig this stuff and figure out the cause of fires. There's 4 different levels. So simple as like a crew fire of like the crew captain just solves it. And then the next one is we have 2 investigators. The next one is like an investigation team. We pull from surrounding as well as Murray PD. And the other one's the big boy. That would be like that 33rd South and 13th East fire. And that brings in like a federal team. Or if we burn a church or something, that brings in some bigger people as well because it goes into federal, stuff. Outreach programs, there's a ton. This is a picture of the chili cook-off. And you guys had to see Chad at least one more time. So I told him he was going to be in my slideshow because I miss Chad. But they have from the cadet program to the coat drive to job fairs to Stop the Bleed, Sub for Santa, public, it's awesome to see this stuff. And this is part of reducing those calls that I talked about. So if I have more time, I'd talk there. Training, you guys brought this up in the budget about that. And you guys are give you an idea, the paramedic school is 45 college credit hours. They do 720 clinicals, roughly 15 hours, 100 hours in the class. And it's more or less an associate's degree on that same line. In fact, actually, every paramedic that comes out has to be from an associate or a certificate level class. That's one of the requirements through national, and that's what the state's adopted. These other classes, that's not even including the fire classes that they do or the CME that's continual basis. So what does the future hold? How long do I got, Kat? I'm over 2 minutes already. Okay. All right. What does the future hold for all of this? I bring this up not as a negative or a positive or anything, but it's information for you guys. So our medical calls I mentioned were on the increase. Of those medical calls, where are they happening at is the question. Being that we're not growing out as a city, we're growing up. I pulled some numbers for you guys that you may like, you may not like. So hopefully, again, of the apartment complexes, when builders come into our city and they put an apartment, you'll always plan on accordingly 0.19 calls per unit that we add to the city. So that kind of calculates, it allows me to say, when do we throw a fourth ambulance on? How many units can you throw at me before I say, I've got to add some more folks on to handle these calls? And this is, it's not fair across the board either, depending upon the style of apartments, and all that changes everything. We have certain apartment complexes that cause more than others, but that's okay. And we are happy to go on all of them.
Joey?
Houses, yeah.
Just real quick, if you don't know off the top of your head, I'll get you another time, but I'm just wondering, how much does it cost our citizens for each emergency call, each ambulance call that goes out?
Ooh, that would be a good, now when you say how much do we collect money-wise? Okay, around $800 per call do we collect. Now that's actually what we collect from a bill that we send out.
Yeah.
If you looked at how much it actually costed the citizens for those ambulance calls, depending upon how we run the data with Brenda, is who we calculate as staffing that ambulance. It's kind of a break even. Would that be a fair statement, Brenda? And so the cost to the citizens would be a break even. If we staffed a fourth ambulance, if and when I foresee that day being sooner than later, eventually I'll be asking you guys for that. It actually will come to a cost from the city. I will not hide that from you guys. It is very difficult to run an ambulance when you start adding the fourth within a city our size to actually cause it, unless you were to do like inner facilities or something. It's not a money-making business in the 911 because we have that many people that don't pay. And I shouldn't say it like that, but I don't know what other words are there besides some people have insurance and some people don't, and some people pay and some people don't.
Thank you. Sorry, Cap.
No, you're good. Houses are about half that. If you add houses, you don't have enough room to add any houses that'll ever affect us, is why that's like non-negotiable. Human behaviors, mental health is on the increase. Those are our other two calls. And we would see that if you didn't add a single apartment complex in Murray, just to be clear, we would continually see our calls go up because unfortunately we live in a world that's maybe struggling more so now than it ever has from what I've seen in the fire service on mental health and our struggling folks. And money's hard on people, as you guys know. Other stuff, no, we're not looking to buy this apparatus, but I thought it was a really cool picture to just say, hey, we should get one of these. And I'm joking, that is an airport, and we would never use a snorkel is what they call that. You guys will see a request coming for a new aerial apparatus. You'll also see a reduction of assignments on response crews, a reduction of assignments on response crews, such as like the inspections. I can keep them going on calls, and I can keep our day staff. I can add one person on days rather than 9 people as a crew. Before I ever add units, I try and pull off of the crews like the inspections. They don't have to do inspections as crews, so I pulled that onto days because I can just hire one person for that, not 9. And why is it 9? Because you have 3 different, shifts, and then that's what it takes to run a crew. We already talked about the ambulance, and then response models are a very interesting thing that I'm always talking about with the mayor. I love Doug's question the other day for me. It was like, how come we send a fire engine to somebody's house? What does that mean? And so my final comment for that is you send a fire engine and an ambulance to every single medical call for 2 reasons. One is it's a county response model that everybody's abiding by. The other one is because when you go on a call, you never know what you're going to get. To give you an idea, the other day, I assume it's probably okay. I'll give them the story that actually I told these guys in department head. There was a weapon pulled on some of our fire guys, and you want that captain that is in charge of the unit to be there. They operate best in crews. They operate in numbers. Police have guns. We have numbers and axes. A lot of people don't mess with the fire department in the fashion of like safety because we have numbers, and there's a number of different reasons for that. Almost all of the issues that we've had were typically when we send a low number of people out to a scene that turns bad, and then we don't have the proper staffing at that moment. And then there's a number of reasons why we want them there. So that kind of answers that. But they did settle the gentleman down, and it was okay, and everything turned out just fine. But that was just a large example that was thrown at me on this weekend, and I was like, don't do that. Hold your breath. So, but yeah. Thanks, you guys, for your time. Any other questions?
you.
Sorry for going over.
No, you're okay. Thanks for any questions. All right. Great information. We always appreciate when you come talk to us.
Yes, thank you, Joey.
All right. Next up, we have Brenda, discussion of a fiscal year 2022-2023 budget amendment.
So I didn't put together anything for this. It's a very long memo. I hope you guys all enjoyed reading it. So the 4 things that this budget amendment is going to do, we had projects in process at the end of fiscal year 22 because we end in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the construction time. And so we're going to roll those projects forward so that they can continue and finish the projects and have the funds to do that. So I do end up pulling all of these out of reserves. But what happens is at the end of the year, June 30th, all of the money that wasn't spent gets put into reserves. And now I'm just pulling it back out for the fiscal year 22 budget, pulling it back out and letting them finish what they're doing. I also do that for anything they're saving with, because it's much easier for me to make sure we don't double spend if it's allocated to a GL account and already budgeted. So if they're saving for something that they're not going to buy for another year, it's still in their budget. And then if they happen to find one, we did this once, I think it was a vacuum truck or something. Somebody had one on a lot and we got it for a discount, but we got it ahead of when we were going to because we had the money sitting there. So that's what the majority of these are. We have received several grant awards. Some of them are standard. We also have some money that is restricted that I need to put back in so that they can spend it. And then we also already, it's September, we have some new projects that we're working on that we need to allocate some money for. Some of the grants we received and rolled forward. We have some donation money that we're going to let them spend this year that they received last year. The museum got a grant that ran from September to September, so we have a little bit of salaries. That's a new one that you probably don't see. I've added it to the document you will see for the council meeting. So we're going to move some of that $5,849 of that forward so that they can continue to use that to pay for the salary for the museum person. We got a state asset forfeiture grant, an emergency medical service grant. The library got a small grant from the State Department of Cultural for Spanish and other language materials. I'm sure she buys Spanish materials anyway, but it's always nice if somebody else helps pay for them. The big one on the roll forward is we're moving $202,000 of restricted alcohol money forward. They did spend $60,000 last year, but we got 80, and they had $127,000 from the previous year that they hadn't spent. They're just waiting. I think their contract for the storage of body cam is probably coming up, and they'll spend it all in one fell swoop. And then we do have insurance. Our insurance is open enrollment is at the same time we're doing budget. And in some of the smaller departments, if someone goes from single to family, they're not going to have enough money in that department to cover it. For the general fund, I'm just going to reallocate those all amongst the departments. There was no need to pull any reserves. It's not going to cost us overall any more money because some people dropped, some people gained. In the power fund, there was one small department that had someone go from single to family. That's a $12,000 change. So I could go, if you want me to, go through all of these projects. Did you have any questions about the projects that were rolled forward?
I just have a quick one. I remember during the budget, we were talking about hiring somebody for health insurance to look at that, to make sure we're getting the best.
We
did
will.
hire- okay.
Yeah, if she hasn't already, we will have a broker, and that helps us with the next cycle.
And she saved, the company we hired saved us close to $200,000 already.
So, and then the new projects that are out there. There are a couple things in the city hall that are owner provided, and I'm not sure. I think we'll come in under budget or at budget for the city hall, but I'm not positive. So these two things were small things that we could just put in the CIP fund for now. And then if we do have funds left over, we will make them part of the city hall project.
That's a big thing. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. So the recorder's office, I don't know, they have a mobile storage unit where you can move the shelves around and stuff, so that you can stack the shelves really close together. We're putting a brand new one in the new city hall because the one we have is broken and doesn't roll very well. When you move the shelves, it doesn't. So, and then the other thing is there is a combined police and city employee gym in that. And so that equipment that we're buying for that, we will buy out of the CIP fund. Then I'm pretty sure since we signed the contract that I can say we're purchasing a piece of property that's adjacent or touches the Murray Theater. And going to turn it into a parking lot. And that is what that other building money is for. So, and I need money to do that. So those are the things that are on the budget. And then just for informational purposes only, because the Municipal Building Authority will have a meeting on the 20th, where we have $4,800,000 that have going to be rolled forward that I haven't already put into that budget for the city hall. Any questions? It's a huge dollar amount, but it's just a standard thing that happens every year.
Sounds great. Thank you, Brenda. All right. Next up, we've got a discussion. Discussion on an ordinance related to land use, amends general plan, chapter 9, related to moderate income housing strategies. We've got Zach and Jared. Hi, guys.
Hello. Long time no see.
Welcome.
I know. So we're on the home stretch with this in this part of moderate income housing. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, this is a request from Planning Division to amend Chapter 9, the moderate income housing element of the 2017 general plan, to be in line with state requirements. So we're here at the home stretch. This is the committee of the whole review. We anticipate, barring no issues, that we'll go for public hearing on the 20th, so we can meet that report date of October 1st of 2022. So, as you all remember, we have gone through and we needed to adopt a minimum of 5 strategies from a list of 24 menu items. So throughout the summer, we've had some discussions on what you guys like, what you don't like, some just background information. So we came down to these 5, and I'll just go over those really quickly. And I'm going to also include the implementation strategies in those as well. So strategy 1 is demonstrate investment in the rehabilitation or expansion of infrastructure that facilitates the construction of moderate income housing. So here we have 5 action items. These largely go hand in hand with each department's master plan, or kind of how they plan out their facilities. So for example, there's the water department, which already had plans to update their master plan in 2023. Then we also have power, which they have budget for it, but I'm not sure exactly when they're going to pull the trigger on that. So I put 2025. That can always be amended, changed, whatever. And then also, so if you guys remember, a lot of you were here. So Parks and Recreation adopted a new master plan, I believe in 2020, and it had a 10-year horizon. So what I'm proposing is that we kind of come back to you guys and provide an update in 2025 to kind of talk about, where parks are at, what's going on there, how's that plan progressing, and just kind of give an update there. Next is working with engineering to update the transportation master plan. You guys also heard this in 2021. They also have about a 10-year horizon timeframe on that. So looking at about 2026 to kind of reevaluate, see if everything is still on trend and working as they had anticipated. And then let's see, lastly is wastewater. I put that at 2027 because they just updated last year as well. So, and that gives us about 5-ish years or so. Actually, I think they may have done it this year. I don't remember. So moving on to strategy 2 is to create or allow for and reduce regulations related to accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. So we have one action plan here, and that is to, by the end of next year, us as planning staff, review those regulations and determine whether there are some actions that we feel that we could recommend to the Planning Commission and then you as the legislative body to make changes to make that a little bit easier for people to do. So that's that one. Strategy 3, amend land use regulations to allow for higher density. That doesn't necessarily say high density, just higher density, or new moderate income residential development in commercial or mixed use zones near major transit investment corridors. As the state has implied major transit investment corridors as your Trax line, Front Runner, those are your major transit investment. So we have 4 action items here. So really these are re-looking at our mixed use zones. And so, for example, based on the feedback you guys received in the survey, for example, you guys are going to be facilitating some changes in the MCCD. So that was the first one that I said that's easy that we can do by the end of next year, is to review those. And then I can go, yay, we win. When we've looked at those. This is not saying that we must make changes to allow for moderate income housing. This is just saying that we'll look at it and recommend things, or, how can we best facilitate that? That doesn't bind your hands into requiring something to be done. It's only that we're going to look at it and make sure that we really address it. And that goes on for the remainder of those other 3. So one is the Murray Central mixed use, which is around Murray Central Station, and then also Center's mixed use and Fashion Place West. looking into potentially developing some sort of mixed use project in conjunction with that station area plan that we had adopted back in 2021, I believe we did. And those are all have timelines on them, typically 24 and 25. Excuse me. This one, which was most popular, implement a mortgage assistance program for employees of the municipality and a bunch of other people. So contracted people of municipalities or other public employer. So like people that work for like the University of Utah Healthcare across from the mall, that kind of stuff. So I have been working with Brenda on figuring out how we go about that. So that one is the only one that has a deadline of December 31st, 2022. I did check with her before I said anything that we could meet that date. And we're largely done with what we need to do to research that. And then next year, we hope to bring forth some sort of proposal and to see how that might work. Strategy 5 is, this is a state mandated strategy, and that is to develop and adopt station area plans in accordance with state statute, all that, 10-9A 403.1. Again, has a list of specific deadlines. I will say that, so the December 31st, 2023 for the Murray North Station, we applied for and received a total of $200,000 to do a station area plan for that. 170,000 of it is from a grant from the state of Utah, and then 15,000 from us as the city, and then 15,000 from Mill Creek because they also had to participate with that. So that's kind of what we're anticipating. That that is my next big project. Starts October 1, so I go straight into that. So those are the 5 strategies and those action items. So the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this on August 4th, 2022. 26 notices were sent to affected entities, and we didn't receive any comment on this. Then also the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to forward a recommendation of approval. Findings. This allows us to stay in the good graces of the state, I guess you could say. And also, you know, we always have to make sure that the general plan remains a living document. It's not just something we do and then sit on a shelf and put it away. So also that's some of the findings there, is that this does help forward the general plan and keeping that going. So with that, the Planning Commission and staff recommend that the council approve the amendment to Chapter 9 Modern Income Housing as reviewed. I flew through that. So questions, comments?
I have a question on
Sure.
strategy 3 with, can you kind of explain what the MCCD, like what you're envisioning for that in relation to the discussions we've been having?
So yes and no, because I don't necessarily envision really anything. It's kind of based on what you as the council are talking, wanting to do and move forward with. We will definitely lend our support towards, we will bring our expertise as planners forward. But I don't necessarily have an agenda in mind. Like, I'm not going to say that all housing should be, at 60% AMI, but we will say, perhaps, if you guys come to us and say, we do want to have moderate income housing in the MCCD, we can give you ideas of how that could be implemented and what options you then do have there. Because, for example, the RDA does have an RDA area for the CBD, and I believe that does have a housing set aside, of an affordable housing set aside that can be used anywhere in the city, but you could also use it for the MCCD specifically. So,
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, and because I know it's not going to be exactly the same as maybe Fire Clay, or
Oh, of
it's not going
course
to be
not.
exactly the same as Fashion Place West or
exactly.
any of those other tracks locations. So
Exactly. Each neighborhood, each part of the city is unique and has its own issues that it needs to have addressed. And,
He'll just help us get there.
and we will
refine
help
them.
you get
Okay.
there. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Look,
Thank
I caught
you.
us up.
That was, wow, that's great information. Should have put you guys first.
Nah, you're
I
good.
could put
You're good.
Joey after. All right. Well,
Can I
guess-
just ask one thing?
yeah.
Are these years firm, like the December 31st, 2024, December 31st, 2025? Are they firm years? Could we look and put those years a little back further, or are they firm because the state wants it that way?
The state wants a firm date. What that date is, I tried to lay out those implementation strategies based on what my and Jared's workload was going to be, and the rest of the planning staff, obviously, because largely this is going to be something not only citywide that has to be looked at. For example, those master plans. I planned those out expecting those departments to conduct those master plan updates. So that just gets things
Okay.
across the board. But if you have a suggestion on another date, the state does want a hard date. So, but those can change.
And if we don't meet those hard dates, what happens? I'm curious. For the
we
citizens
adjust.
that are listening.
We
adjust?
adjust. Yeah. If I anticipate that I'm not going to get something done, I will come forward probably with a general plan amendment saying, let's change this. Obviously I'll have to report it to the state because here we have to report what our actionable steps were and what we achieved throughout the year. So it's just something we'd have to talk through. I don't think we would necessarily lose any funding availability or anything like that. So
Isn't there, with the new bill, isn't there a time frame that we have to get our master plan done within like 5 years and then implement it? Aren't
So,
there some markers in there?
that's the station area plans.
Okay.
Those have to be done by December 31st of 2025, I want to say, which I'm already on track for that. So I'm not worried about that at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. And you guys are up next with a text amendment to the Fire Clay Master Transportation Plan.
All right. Quickly make one change here. Okay. So the Fire Clay Master Transportation Plan Amendment. I'm going to give you just a little, by show of hands, how many of you knew there was a Master Transportation Plan in the Fire Clay area? There is. It's part of our zoning in the TOD zone. So I want to just quickly kind of describe where it resides. That Master Transportation Plan is part of the design guidelines that are attached to the TOD zone. So it's a third level deep in that zoning. That Fire Clay area, this is just an overview, an aerial of the Fire Clay area. We call it the TOD zone, but it is the Fire Clay area commonly. And that Master Transportation Plan is part of this zone. So that's showing you that kind of orange color is the TOD zone area. Within that zoning and within that plan, that Master Transportation Plan, there is a map, a master map that shows these different streets. And what you may not realize is that, and we've walked around this area and you walked on some of these streets, they didn't exist in that area before this redevelopment plan got put in place and this new zoning was put in place, and it called for this street grid to move people around it in a better way, in a more pedestrian friendly way. So we walked on Burke Hill Boulevard that did not exist prior to the zone. We walked on Fire Clay Avenue, which did. That was the only street going down in, and then Main Street that ran into that area. Since it's been put in, lots of new streets have been added, mostly on this west side, but then on the east side too, as development has happened, we have added streets. This one right here, it's not labeled on the Master Transportation Plan because it didn't have a name. It was just an unnamed street like the one that we're going to talk about today. It's called Edison Avenue. It actually continues on to Main Street a little ways up, but not all the way to State there. It goes all the way up to State Street, Edison Avenue. This is the street we're talking about today. It's an unnamed east-west connection between Burke Hill Boulevard and Main Street. And in the Master Transportation Plan, currently, it's shown in a certain position. You can see it right here. This is the current location on the mapping. And the request that we've received is to move it from right here to right here, further south. That is the sum total of the request. Now, there are some reasons for that and some pros and cons to doing it, so we've been debating it a little bit back and forth. In the end, we have ended up recommending as a staff, engineering and planning, that we do this, that we make this change, and the Planning Commission concurred. I'm going to walk you through how that works. That is the only change that's being proposed. So that's the only change to the Master Transportation Plan. It has lots of other components, has a street typology, et cetera. None of that's really on the agenda, just this particular change. Some of the benefits of moving it, well, let me talk first about the reason for wanting to move it. There is a development group called Evergreen who's made the request, and they're looking at developing this property right here, where the road would have been placed. I'm sorry, I'm doing the wrong property. The property right here. The road would have been placed right here. They'd like to move it to the south side of their property and develop it in the future. And there are a couple of reasons for that, but principal among them involves the kind of building they want to do, the kind of development they want to do, and moving the road actually helps us to further develop the county property that's here, and eventually the UTA property that runs alongside Burke Hill. As it stands right now, we would dead end Burke Hill right here at the new road. If we were making them keep it where it is, they developed this property, put an east-west road in, and Burke Hill would dead end right here. We benefit by this new plan extending Burke Hill further to the south and opening up more development for Salt Lake County and more development for UTA as they redevelop their properties. In the past, those weren't as big a consideration. UTA is more interested in redeveloping their property lately, and this will help facilitate that. The track station is right here. So we have a great benefit of this whole area redeveloping in as the TOD. And this move to this road helps us do that a little bit. It does have an impact to vehicular traffic. Just to be clear, if the roadway were put in here, the intersection at Main Street's far enough away from 45th South that it would be a full intersection with all motions. Further south like this, it'll be a little more restricted, right in, right out only. But vehicles aren't our main concern in this area, the vehicle circulation. Pedestrian traffic benefits greatly from this. We can still have pedestrians through this area through I can't think of anything but the Spanish term right now off the top of my head. It's a peatonal. This will be a paseo. It's not English either, but whatever. You get the picture. There'll be a pedestrian access without vehicles, and we can have vehicular access here, but more limited. That still works. We have some traffic analysis that shows that works well, that the applicant provided. Engineering feels like this works as well, too. They were not quick to come around, but in the end, we felt like the traffic analysis was legit, and it will help us do some other things. It gets us better utility extensions, too, and some looping that we need that'll be good for our utilities. Our main concern was making sure that there is a way for UTA, Salt Lake County, and Evergreen to participate in the installation of that roadway so that it does get done. They're working on a development agreement. We have letters of support from both of those other organizations as well as Evergreen, so we're confident that it can go forward and still be provided. We want to make sure that east-west connection does happen. In the meantime, there'll be an emergency turnaround for those fire apparatus, the fancy stuff that you're going to buy for Joey. So if he has to drive anything down that road, he can get it turned around and out until it's fully connected to Burke Hills Extension when it finally goes in. It might take a couple of years to get that full roadway in, so for a while it'll be a temporary connection. This is just a quick, this looks like a parking lot. It's actually the base floor of a proposed building. This would be parking structure, and this is to show you that turnaround, that temporary turnaround that would be put in until we get the full extension of Burke Hill and that full east-west connection. So pedestrian access, as you can see, that stays good. We have the pedestrian access on the on the north, and we have pedestrians along the south access there too. Public service and emergency benefits. We have some good pedestrian access between Main Street and Burke Hill because of it, and better development potential for both UTA and Salt Lake County properties. Those are all in the findings that are listed here. The Planning Commission did vote to recommend favorably for this change to you, and we're still supporting it as staff. And that's the recommendation that we're making. So, yeah, do you have any questions about that? I know it's kind of a complicated 3 layers into that zoning, but that's the Master Transportation Plan change we're proposing.
Sounds great. Any questions? Okay.
Thanks.
Then we'll move on to do you have one more? Yes, you do. Discussion. Go ahead.
To stand up and sit down, or should I just stay right here?
You can stay there. You can just dive right in.
Okay. Just make
Need a new alias for each agenda item. Go ahead.
So the general plan and zone map amendment, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is a request to amend the general plan and the zoning for 861 East Winchester Street, 6250, 6560, and 6580 South and 900 East. This is the R.C. Willey property, if you haven't remembered from the complicated address yet, the former R.C. Willey property. The request right now is to change the future land use map designation from general commercial to medium density residential, and the zoning from the CD zoning to the RM15 zone. Previous applications have been for mixed use. This is, to be clear, this is not mixed use. This is just RM15 zoning that they have requested. Those are the subject properties. Again, you can see the R.C. Willey building right there. Everything in yellow is part of the request. Nothing's changed in that regard from the last time you've seen requests. It is 9.11 acres at the intersection 900 East and Winchester Street. It's currently in that CD zone. So that everything in red, and everything behind it you can see is the R18 zone, these single family residences along the road there. A little bit of office zoning to the west. And then Wheeler Farm, right up in here. The properties are also in the future land use designation for general commercial, as we discussed. And the request involves both the general plan and the zoning because we want those to match up so that they support, so there is support by the general plan for the change to the zoning. The categories behind it are all in the low density residential. So the request is to go from this general commercial in this area in yellow to the medium density residential right here. Medium density residential as a land use category supports things like R210 and RM15, which is the request. That's about 12 units to the acre. So it's not as high density as 20 units or the mixed use zones that get you to 30 and 40 units, but it's more than the R18, more than the single family detached. Just a couple of comparisons for the zoning that's being requested. CD zones allow 35 feet of height. If you're within 100 feet of zoning, then you get an additional foot of height for every 4 feet you're set back further from the zone, from the residential zone. The RM15 allows up to 40 feet. That's the maximum. And that has to be allowed as part of the Planning Commission's approval. And that's significant because the things that are allowed in the RM15 zone, when you do multifamily projects in RM15 zoning, you go to the Planning Commission for approval for those, for conditional use permit approval and a site layout. And what the Planning Commission does in that process is look at the impacts of what you're proposing and try to mitigate those impacts. They're not looking so much at denying things other than modifying how you're doing it to make sure they're trying to ameliorate the effects of what you're doing to the surrounding properties. And they don't get to go in the RM15 zone any higher than 40 feet. That's the maximum. Parking, this is a standard multifamily zone. It's not like our mixed use zones that get reductions in parking. So it's 2.5 spaces of parking per dwelling unit. The retail parking and things in the CD zone are pretty standard, 4 per 1,000 and 1 to 200 on medical and office uses. Front yard setbacks are largely similar. 20 feet in the CD zone, 25 in the RM15 zone. There's no rear yard setbacks or other setbacks in the CD zone that are defined, but the RM15 are pretty standard residential setbacks for buildings. Now, I would caveat that with understanding that a lot of times we do planned unit developments where we modify those setbacks a little bit, but the Planning Commission likes to see pretty standard setbacks, 20 feet for rear yards, 20 feet for front yards. If we're going to park in those front yard areas, those are the kind of things we're looking at, even when they ask for modifications. General plan considerations to support this. Again, one of the main objectives of our general plan from 2017 was to encourage housing options for a variety of family sizes and households. It's not to say that everything has to be high density or higher density housing, but there ought to be a variety of housing choices. That general plan was very interested in supporting that. This would go a long way toward doing that. RM15 gives you 12 units per acre. The Boyer company that's making the request intends to build townhomes on this property. We can talk about that. Not included the concept plans they've been working on, although the neighborhood has seen those, and there's some support for those kinds of plans. They're able to, with townhomes at 12 units per acre, it's not a huge density. They don't need greater heights. They can keep them away from the residential properties. We've had some successes with those kind of projects in recent applications. Boyer's following those same kinds of patterns. 12 units per acre gets you a good townhome project in the Utah market. It sells well. There's a good return on investment. Some of the concerns that we hear from folks, and we've seen it in in comments that came in for Planning Commission and recently too, are that it does allow apartments. The RM15 zone gives you 12 units per acre, and it does allow apartments. But when you can do at only 12 units per acre, it's really not cost effective for developers in the market currently to build apartments. It's more cost effective to do the townhomes. They rent better, they sell better, and you get a better return.
Jared,
Yes.
is there green space in this development?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do require open space in this zone. You need 15% at least in a project. In the concepts that Boyer's been doing at 12 units the acre, you're going to see more like 25 and 30% open space in these.
Okay, good.
Yep. Let's see. Another objective is to, again, it supports these objectives to provide that diversity of housing options. Townhomes are part of that missing middle housing that we talk about a lot, that you hear about. It also supports those goals that Zach was just talking about. Is Zach gone? Did you hear me call him Brad? Oh, good. Okay, good. He's probably listening in his car right now, but that's okay. Zach was just talking about the moderate income housing plan. That missing middle goes a long ways toward helping, providing diversity in housing and mixed income housing goes a long ways toward helping people find homes, and that helps moderate income housing. It's not as easy to quantify maybe all the time, but it does help. And we feel like it supports those goals as well. We did find the Planning Commission and City and the planning staff found that it supports that general plan, that zoning map amendment from CD to RM15 will be a benefit in that area. We can look at that as a transition from the commercial and office and the high traffic on Winchester Street to buffering that single family neighborhood. And because of the way the Planning Commission can look at the conditions during a conditional use permit application and the townhomes being the likely project there, we feel like that provides an appropriate transition for that neighborhood and helps to keep that neighborhood intact and stable and not impact it too greatly. The proposed zone map amendment conforms to those goals that we just talked about as well. And the Planning Commission did review this. I don't have it in the recommendations here, but in your packet, I believe I talked about the date they reviewed this. They did recommend approval to the City Council. They felt like this was a good compromise back from not going to the higher densities of the mixed uses, but this will provide a good transition and some missing middle housing. So they're recommending both the general plan amendment to support the zoning map amendment to RM15. Any questions for me at this point?
I didn't see many really negative comments. I mean,
No,
there was
there's-
one that was, okay. So
Sure.
that was good.
There's
That's
still a
great.
few concerns out there, and I'm sure that's just always part of things. But this is as least concerned as we have seen the neighborhood. I feel like we
Yeah.
can really do a good job on this. I know that the Boyers themselves, the Boyer Company went to the neighborhood and talked about this with folks, and
Right.
and really I think made some progress with people and made them more comfortable with the plan. And this zoning doesn't allow you to go high enough density that would really be impactful.
Yeah, I think it's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions or comments? Okay. I just think as we lose the sort of need for those big box stores to transition to this middle income housing is just perfect. So that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I'm sorry I rushed our first presentation this morning. We wanted to leave tons and tons of time, but all right, if there's no objection, we are adjourned now until council. Thank you.